So we got to a really exciting part in Phoenix, and I'm so pleased to get back to it. Now, we found out that we'd long suspected the aliens weren't that different to humans. The horns were made of hair wrapped up into cones. The hoofs were boots. It's just the eyes that are different. So, our main character, Lucky, has disguised himself as an alien. They've gone down to the mainland. Now, not mainland, they've gone to a new planet, haven't they? New planet. Where they need to speak to someone to get information for Lucky to find his father. However, they very got caught by a shadow guard, but our super Bixer got him out of it. The best way to remember the rest of the story, though, is to get cracking and it all come pouring back in. So let's do that. Chapter 16, and I really am pleased with pouring towards halfway through the book. They entered the caverns. Each one was crammed with stalls extending far into the distance. They were wild with colours and sound. The air was thick with music, pulsing from speakers high above their heads. Lucky recognised the tune. "Hey, isn't that the music you like?" he asked Bixer. "Yeah," she nodded happily. "Listen, Frolics, they're playing Gala." Frolics beamed with pleasure as they walked through the market. Lucky gazed around, trying to take it all in. His senses were bursting. There was everything for sale here, everything he'd ever heard of, and even more that he hadn't. The first cavern was packed with stalls selling animals, and it had an overpowering musky smell. There were brightly feathered birds flapping in their cages, snakes hissing in glass displays. There were solemn-eyed leopards on leashes, and wolves curled up asleep. The next was full of stalls selling combat and security gear. Rack after rack of body armour, ground blasters, cannon of every size, whips, chains, electrocuffs, tracking devices, surveillance cams, long-range comms, all open, all for sale. Beyond that was a cavern with massive speaker stacks, 50 feet high, and vid screens even bigger. An image flashed up on one of the giant screens, then another and another. Lucky couldn't stop staring at them. It was as if everything else melted away, because the image was of a handsome man with a moustache, dressed in a starship's commander's uniform. The very same man whose vidpic Lucky had grown up looking at. He looked much older and he wasn't smiling because AXA troops in military uniforms were holding a gun to his head. But it was unquestionably him. "Update on the hostages" scrolled across the screens. The image changed to show the president of the human worlds addressing the galaxy from her office. Her voice rang out of the speakers. "We have received this footage of Major Dashwood, commander of a government science ship, who is being held by alien forces beyond the space wall," she announced. "We demand his immediate release and that of all prisoners of war. We will not negotiate with alien wrongdoers. I vow to you I will personally bring them to justice, starting with their king." She continued talking, but Lucky's mind was whirling. Dashwood. So that was his real name. Not Ashbourne. I'm assuming that's Lucky's dad, was it? Or have I forgotten something? "What are you staring at, kid?" said Frolics. "That man," said Lucky, pointing at the screens. "That's my father." Frolics looked up and saw the broadcast. His expression darkened. Lucky couldn't stop staring. There he was at last, the centre of his hopes, the great space hero whose image had watched over his childhood and with whom he'd shared so many imaginary adventures. This was the man who Lucky believed would answer all the questions, the one person in the galaxy who could take care of him and make everything all right again. Yet it seemed his father was the one who needed help. "What are they doing to him?" he said. "I have to rescue him." "You gotta find him first," said Frolics gently. And even then... Lucky kept looking at the vid screens, hoping for more information about his father, but the broadcast had ended and the screens were now flashing up a public safety warning about the need for people to cooperate with the shadow guards. He looked down, bitterly disappointed. "Come on," said Bixer. "Let's find the Professor and get your astrolabe fixed. Then at least you might know where to look." Lucky followed Bixer and Frolics in silence, his mind spinning with troubled thoughts. At last he had some information about his father. But what terrible information! It was shocking to see him so vulnerable, in such danger. If he was a prisoner of war, then the chances of finding him were slimmer than ever, and yet Lucky yearned to find him even more. They tramped deeper into the market, past stalls selling food, clothes, boots. Lucky was struggling to keep up. After the awful vidpic he'd just seen, it made him queasy to look down and see what appeared to be big black cloven hooves marching beneath him instead of feet. It was so strange, so alien. But Bixer and Frolics dragged him ever onwards, through thousands of stalls, past heaps and heaps of merchandise, until at last, in a dim dark corner, they came to a small antique stall. It seemed rather neglected. There were all sorts of strange objects stacked up in boxes at the front, and a dusty curtain at the back. Everything looked faded, like it had seen much better days. No one else was shopping here, while the other stalls thronged with customers. A single elderly AXA sat behind the counter. "Stay here, Lucky, while we greet him," whispered Frolics as he approached the stall. Bixer went with him, while Lucky hung back forlornly and watched. The old AXA looked as antiquated as his stall. He had bushy whiskers that met in a cavalier-style moustache and great white horns upon his head. His eyes were hidden behind a huge pair of horn-rimmed spectacles. A bird perched on his shoulder, eyes closed. It was about the size of a parrot, but its feathers were amazingly intense colours, crimson gold like flames. Even in the dim light, it seemed to glow like a little sun. "Professor Byzantine?" called Bixer. The old AXA looked up sharply, peering over the top of his spectacles. He seemed confused for a second, then a smile spread across his face. "Bixer Quicksilver?" he asked. "It's me," she grinned, needles blushing pink. "And do my eyes deceive me, or do I behold young Frolics?" Professor peered up at Frolics' huge bulk. "My goodness, you have grown." "Well, it's been 10 years, said Frolics, almost shyly as they embraced the old man. The bird on his shoulder woke up. It flexed its wings and then turned to look at Lucky, who was still hanging back, feeling troubled. The bird blinked. It flew over to him and landed by his feet. Up close, its face looked old and wise, perhaps even ancient. It seemed playful, though, and started pecking at his hooves. He bent down to stroke its feathers. They were soft to touch and very warm. And then as he stroked it, the bird opened its beak and spoke like a parrot. "Bazooka!" it chirped, as a little jet of fire flared around its beak. It wasn't hot enough to hurt, but Lucky hadn't been expecting fire, or words for that matter, and he was startled. He jerked backwards and bumped into the stack of boxes at the front of the stall. The antiques teetered one way, then the other. "No!" gasped Lucky and stuck his hands out to steady them. It was the worst thing he could have done. Boxes started tumbling down around him. First one box, then 2, 3, then a rain of boxes, a shower, cascading disastrously, faster and faster. By the time it was over, he was knee-deep in broken antiques, surrounded by clouds of dust, and the little bird was chortling at the chaos. Okay, that's our midway point of chapter 16. Will the breakage of the antiques affect Lucky's visit? How will Professor Byzantine react? Will Professor Byzantine be helpful? What are his links to Bixer and Frolics? Was there anything intriguing about the way he greeted them? Okay, tune in to the next video, which will be chapter 16, part 2.